These are really the things I don't want to forget. I want to make sure that I remember these. It's a problem that many people don't talk about, but they will go online and look for solutions out there.
What if a breakthrough began not in a lab, but in a rented house full of roommates brainstorming after hours? That's where Véronique Peiffer found herself, halfway through her Stanford Biodesign fellowship, when a late-night conversation about a friend's rare condition sparked an idea that became a real company. It started with something as odd as electrified water baths, and turned into a lesson about risk, resilience, and what it really takes to turn curiosity into care. Today, Véronique's journey has come full circle, from engineer to founder to author, sharing the hard-won lessons of building in the world of health innovation. Let's dig in. Véronique, you have such an interesting journey. You started with your PhD in cardiovascular fluid mechanics. I'm curious, winding back the hands of time, what were your hopes and wishes that you were dreaming of when you stepped from your work in science, deep basic science, directly into McKinsey?
Well, it's a bit of a history from before I started the PhD. I had done an internship in management consulting before starting my PhD, and it's actually the other way around more than anything else. So I had done that internship. I got an offer to start with that company. And then I thought, well, I thought I was going to do a PhD, and I thought I was going to be maybe a professor or so in the far future. So I had to think the other way around about, do I really want to still do that research, or do I step into business? So I decided to do the PhD after all. And then once I'd done that, I thought, hey, I actually did learn quite a bit in management consulting. So let me go back and get a little deeper into that.
Wow, that's so neat. So you did some management consulting before and after the PhD?
Yeah, so it was just an internship over summer that I had done during my college years.
Huh.
And then I went back to it after my PhD for 3 years.
Wow. I mean, we're talking about this casually, but I remember in college, I think they called it on-campus recruiting, or OCR. I mean, I remember hearing about these classmates that were doing things at McKinsey, and it was not like, oh, gee, maybe I'll do this. I remember it being extremely intense to even have the opportunity for those internships. So not surprising that even at an early age, you were doing incredibly competitive things at these really high levels.
Yeah, it was really fun to be able to get that experience early on and learn what it's like. Indeed,
Yeah.
long days.
Oh my gosh, I've heard rumors about the time people spend working and at home versus wide awake at work. Why don't we fast forward a little bit to what you were thinking and dreaming of when you were doing your work in McKinsey with your PhD under the belt already, and you decided to step into the world of biodesign. If you put yourself in the shoes, what were you curious about, and what were you hoping it would lead to?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer by training, and as a result, I've always been passionate about healthcare. I've kind of somehow always known I wanted to work in and around healthcare. But so as an engineer, medical devices spoke to me. And with McKinsey, I was advising a lot of pharmaceutical companies because I was living in Belgium, which is where I'm from originally. There was a lot of pharma back in Belgium. And I was curious to be able to get a bit closer to the medical device world. So in my search for information, I came across the textbook of biodesign. And it was on Amazon, got the book, started reading, and I realized, there's so much that I didn't know about everything that comes with the innovation aspects of these medical devices. And it made me curious about going earlier and into the medical device world. With McKinsey, I was advising mostly pharma companies, and then at the commercial stage. So we thought it would be fantastic with my background to be able to dive into the medical device innovation space. And that's what brought me to biodesign.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so you show up at the beginning of your biodesign fellowship year, and were they, when you did fellowship, were they assigning areas, like need areas, or were they assigning subject matter areas, or was it a free, wide open space for your year?
Yeah, so for biodesign, there was always a focus area that they make you work on. For us, it was obstetrics and gynecology. So that's the space that we were asked to innovate in. That's not the space that I ended up working in, though.
Tell me more.
So I came from Belgium. We had found a group of 3 fellows total who were part of that year. And we decided to find a house together and live together for the year. So we had a full experience day and night. And we were thinking, okay, let's, rather than just have our teams during the day, let's also start some brainstorming at night in terms of what we can innovate on. Justin and I started looking into what are our own medical issues that we think would be helpful to see solved, and can we bring that through the biodesign process, similar as what we're doing in our daytime projects. And we started thinking about those. Justin confided in me that he suffered from excessive sweating, hyperhidrosis, localized to certain body parts. I had Raynaud's phenomenon on the list, which is your fingers getting really cold and white when it's cold outside. We had a bunch of other things on that list, but so we start with what are the problems that we have some personal interest in solving, and then let's see if there was a market for it, if what the competitive landscape looks like, what the mechanisms of actions are for those, and see if we can solve any of those.
I love so many things about this part of the story. I mean, I'm biased, but my biodesign year, when I did the fellowship, I also had a biodesign roommate. We were also on the same team, and we did not have our act together quite as well as you and Justin in terms of working on a second project in the background, but it really accentuates the experience when you're thinking about it 24/7 and living with someone who kind of understands the language. And I also think it's really interesting that you went after conditions that you were intimately familiar with on the patient side. I'm wondering with hyperhidrosis, which of course you ended up diving deeper in to develop a solution. Can you walk through what it's like to live life as a patient with this, and maybe even walk through the story of a patient with a more severe end of the spectrum with this, just so our listeners can really appreciate what the experience is?
Yeah, so many patients first realize that they suffer from this problem in adulthood, as they might get the symptoms when they're 10, 12 years old. It might start a little later, but typically in childhood, young adolescence, the problem will start. And we were specifically focused on hand sweat. You can have this problem in armpits, on hands, or on feet. But what we heard when we were talking with patients is that hands was what bothered the most. Again, going back to those early, like when they first start noticing the problem, it would often be, well, I had a test to do, and my the paper I was writing on was soaked because of my sweaty hands, and I would be really embarrassed to have to hand in that paperwork. Or
Wow.
be around kids being asked to hold hands to go to a class, and then hearing from their friends that, oh, this is gross. And so it's all these early times where you're developing your personality is when you're confronted with that problem. And many of those young patients don't realize what it is, think that this is just something they're dealing with. Very often, the way for them to find out is by going on the internet, by researching, hey, I have sweaty hands, like, what is this? And then they'll, many of them will find out, okay, there is actually a medical condition, and this might be something that not just me suffers from. But so that's what we learned also when we were doing early needs research on this, is that it's a problem that many people don't talk about broadly, but they will go online and look for solutions out there.
That is so interesting, because I mean, throughout all sorts of e-commerce businesses where you really need to think carefully about the copy that you put in headlines to really connect with an audience, there are so many tools that folks can use to sort of scrape search data and search results and see what people are talking about online. And this seems like such a rich source of potential insights.
Yeah,
were there
exactly.
any...
To me, that was one of the attractive portions of trying to solve this problem, right? We did even some research to understand how much would it cost to advertise online, and we compared this need versus acne versus hair loss. And the cost to advertise for excessive hand sweat was extremely low because there's not a ton of good solutions out there. And the hit rate was actually extremely high because people were interested in finding solutions. So it was one of the pieces of evidence that we had that there was a true need out there and that it actually could be pretty cost effective to try and solve it by leveraging some online channels ultimately.
When you really dug into the problem, I understand that you looked around at the existing solutions on the market and none of them really were all that pragmatic. Can you share a little bit about what you found?
Yeah. The first information we had was from my co-founder himself and what he had tried in the process of dealing with his own excessive hand sweat. But then we did a ton of research to understand, like, what do people actually use, what's out there. And so it came down to a couple of different solutions, some very non-invasive, but also not very effective. And then, and that can be the stronger antiperspirant. You do have some drugs that can be used, anticholinergics that can be used for this as well, but there are going to be some side effects with that. And for hand sweat, it's not all that effective. Would be more effective for armpit sweat. And then you can go all the way to a surgery that will cut through the sympathetic nervous system and be very invasive, obviously very effective too, but with a small but real risk of profuse sweating elsewhere on the body. So you have to trade off and kind of see, does that risk, is that worth it? And in between there was Botox injections that are, again, very effective, but you have to do those every 3 to 6 months. Very painful for hand sweat, as you might imagine. And we also looked at what other therapies were coming out in the market. So again, not much for hand sweat. There were some solutions for armpit sweat. Actually, some people that we knew had been working on microwave therapy for armpit sweat, a very effective and safe solution for armpits. But because your hands have such thick skin and it's a very sensitive part of your body, it is really hard to get any of the solutions that would work well on armpits to also be effective on the palms.
Oh, wow. Okay. And tell me about the solution that you built and what informed that.
Yeah, so one of the solutions I haven't talked with about yet in this series of options out there today is called iontophoresis. It's the delivery of low levels of electrical stimuli to the skin to deactivate sweat glands for about a week at a time. You have to do this on a frequent basis, but you do get a proper reduction of sweat levels. And this is an existing therapy. We had found out about it again through researching online, and maybe there was a patient who told us that they had tried it. But when you see what these devices look like, they're really just water baths hooked up to a battery or even to the wall, and then you have to put your hands in there. It just doesn't look safe. It actually is if used correctly.
Electrified
but
water,
really,
what could go wrong?
excuse me.
Oh,
Well, yeah,
electrified water.
you're being told, like, don't connect water with electricity. It's just not the right thing to do. And that's what you have to do for this solution.
Oh my God.
So we saw that, and it's also very, not very user friendly. You have to put your hands in these water baths. You have to sit there for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And there is nothing that you can do because you really have to sit still with your hands. Otherwise, you might feel some mild electric shock if you take out one of those hands. So we understood that was actually a really effective solution, but that the form factor wasn't optimal. And there were also some people would complain about the sensation, the weird tingling sensations that were uncomfortable for them. So we saw potential in that, but also saw problems with it that we thought were potentially possible to solve.
I see. And then not to overly simplify your solution, but the form factor to me always looked a little bit like a glove. Is that how you thought of it?
Correct. Yeah. So it really, I mean, we took that solution. This is a working solution. But let's change the form factor indeed to gloves. So making it something that you can wear whilst you're doing some other things, and you remain actually the same, and the mechanism of action remains the same as that water bath solution. So yeah, it's also something you wear the gloves for about 20, 30 minutes at a time. And then you need to keep up maintenance once a week to make sure that the sweat glands remain suppressed.
Wow. So smart. Well, for folks who are unfamiliar with the biodesign process, I think one of the beauties of it is there's so many built-in checkpoints or gut checks that are kind of baked into the system where you sort of make sure that this thing has legs. And I'm curious, what did that look like when before you got into solution building to sort of do a quick check and make sure that this thing, was a large enough, appropriate need to solve? And then tell me a little bit more about once you had your solution, how you really started to think this might make sense to put into a real company and keep moving it forward.
Yeah, and even before we were thinking about solutions, as you said, with biodesign, you think about all these other aspects. So we had looked into the regulatory landscape. What would it take to get reimbursed, or even get some willingness to pay out of pocket? So we were kind of looking at all of these things. But then from a solutions perspective, the nice thing about having a person on the team that has the issue is that you can do quite some experimenting. I'm not giving any legal advice on this, but that was possible with our team. So
Yeah.
we had quickly, once we'd come up with this idea, or let's change the form factor, we had kind of jury rigged together a version of that solution. And we got some really early data from my co-founder's hand to show that this was an effective therapy.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool. What a great story. I mean, at the very beginning. And so at this point, were you in the thick of it with your biodesign year, or was this sort of reaching the end of that year?
Yeah, we were. We started this about halfway into the biodesign year, and so by the time we had that early data, it was about time to apply for summer extension funding, which we were able then to get for our idea that came actually out of our nights and weekends project. So we kind of rolled it into biodesign. We were able to get some funding over the summer for this project.
Wow. And then, I think many folks, whether they're coming out of biodesign or another academic environment where they've built something really special and they're considering making that sort of support their life, what came next once you finished the extension, and tell me about that leap and everything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for everyone, it is a leap you're taking there, right? It's really for you to decide: is there enough meat to this? Do we really believe sufficiently in this to take it further? And that was the case for me. That was the case for Justin. So we ended up applying for a bunch of different grants to be able to take it forward, and we're able to successfully do that. I think the biggest breakthrough that came for us in that regard was we were accepted into Fogarty Institute for Innovation. Now it's called Fogarty Innovation. That was really a breakthrough for us to really get some credibility from a well-respected incubator, and it helped also with raising our angel round.
Can you share maybe some pivotal challenges? I mean, right now it sounds like everything was smooth sailing, but I imagine it must have been a boiling cauldron below the surface with all the work that you were putting in.
I mean, as for anything, I think it's with ups and downs when you do this work. When I say that we were successful with some grants, we were unsuccessful with so many others. When we were successful with one incubator, again, I think we applied 3 times to StartX before we got a spot there. So it takes some persistence to be able to ultimately be successful with some of these things. And then again, angel fundraising is hard. There's so many no's that you'll get before you end up with just the one yes. I applied to so many angel groups, and we never got any angel group funding, for example. So there was on all of this, it's a rocky road.
What surprised you about this process? Because it seems like such an obvious problem for the people who have it, and it seems like such a hair on fire unmet need for people who have it, who must be searching for a solution.
Yeah, I mean, lots of things that were surprising. One surprise we had was on the reimbursement side. Initially, this device that was going to be our predicate was actually a class 3 device. So,
Just for our listeners who are unfamiliar, can you describe the significance of being class 3? And
the FDA has 3 different classes, and each of them have different risk levels. So class 1 is the lowest risk. Class 3 is the highest risk. Class 3 often has to do with more invasive types of therapies. Very much not what we were expecting to see with that iontophoresis device. But it turned out to be a class 3 device because it was such an old device that really hadn't been reviewed by the FDA yet. Luckily, one of our mentors was able to get in touch with the FDA together with us on the call, and we were able to get some clarity around the implications of the fact that it was a class 3. And I believe about a year into our project, they reclassified it to class 2, luckily.
oh, that's wonderful. So class 1 being something like a stethoscope,
Yeah.
or and then class 3 being an incredibly invasive, maybe surgical instrument.
Correct.
Wow. So how did that shape your funding and the challenges that you had to overcome as you're moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, this one is just one example, but for each of those different IP would be another one, right? Like with all of these different aspects of an innovation, there's going to be some positives, there's going to be some negatives, and for yourself, first you have to determine is that risk worth it, and then also you have to convince investors that it's worth it, and that there is a risk reward that is favorable. So yeah, I would say this was just one of the examples along the way that we were like, okay, it's class 3, but we believe there was a path here, and we felt like it was, even though we had to explain more than we expected, it was still something we could talk around.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I want to make sure we leave some time to talk about the scrappy entrepreneur, and I know there's so much more in the Palm journey. I guess would we be able to maybe fast forward a little bit and hear how you thought about how you made the decision and recognized when you wanted to begin winding down Palm? Was that a single moment? Was that kind of a gradual realization? Take us behind the scene.
Yeah, so we were, let's say March 2020, where I think that month will resonate with many as the start of COVID-19 pandemic. And I was just in the process of raising our Series A financing, talking with many different angel groups and professional investors to be able to get our next funding round together. And then COVID hit. I had a flight planned to go to Chicago to present to an angel group, and my husband was telling me, please don't go. It seems like a dangerous thing to do. He was like, no, if this flight is on, I will be on that flight and I'm going to go out, present. I will wear a mask, but I will be presenting to this angel group. But then unfortunately for me, maybe luckily in hindsight, they ended up canceling the meeting.
Wow.
And so I wasn't able to go there anymore. But that was just the start of a number of setbacks that we had with regard to fundraising, to the point where I was seeing our cash go down and not really seeing an opportunity to make a breakthrough in the fundraising journey. So that's where I looked at it and said, okay, what do I think is going to happen? Is the pandemic going to last through this year of 2020, or is it going to go beyond? And if it is going to go beyond, I know that this is not going to work and we're not going to be successful. So rather than running the company completely into the ground, I chose to hibernate and to keep sufficient funds in the bank to be able to support our IP, but ended up closing all the operations. So I stopped working on it, found a job. All of the people that were working on this, also, I told them once I knew that this was going to happen, made the decision, and they could find other things to do as well. And so we ended up, unfortunately, having to hibernate the company, and we haven't started it since then.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this journey with me, and I'd love to shift gears for the remaining time that we have in our conversation. Talk to you about your book, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole other journey.
Yeah.
Um, how long did you have the itch to write a book before you started writing? Is that the correct way to describe it, or tell me about this?
Yeah, maybe not quite an itch, but so as I just told you about, like we had those couple of months of really needing to decide what to do next with the company. Once we had decided that we were going to hibernate, that was of course really a tough time for me because I'd been working on this for a number of years at that point, and so letting that go, at least in that moment, was extremely tough. So one of the things I ended up doing is I just took a notebook and I made a couple of notes around. These are really the things I don't want to forget. I want to make sure that I remember these as an early stage entrepreneur, first time entrepreneur. So I just made a couple of notes in my notebook and then put them on the shelf somewhere. And it was probably about 3 years later, when I was going on mat leave. I was going to start my second mat leave. And for my first mat leave, I'd had a project kind of for
Mat leave,
myself.
maternity leave.
Maternity leave. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. I I just thought I'm going to have 3 months to spend with my baby. That's amazing, but I need something else to do rather than just changing diapers and feeding and putting her to sleep. So luckily, so that's when I decided to pick up that notebook again and say, okay, let's see if I can write something that is useful to other entrepreneurs out there or aspiring entrepreneurs. So um, I saw it as a project to see, okay, can I do something with this, and how far can we get it?
Wow. Well, you got it pretty far.
And luckily, my baby was a very good sleeper, so I actually got a ton more done in those 3 months than I had expected.
Oh, that's huge. That makes such a difference. How did you decide on your publisher? When did you look for a publisher? How did that whole process come together?
Yes, I was completely new to that publishing world, book writing world. So I didn't realize that actually you don't have to have your book written before you reach out to a publisher. But I did have most of the book written. So it ended up taking me maybe a year and a half, 2 years to finish my first full draft of it. And I'd gotten feedback from various people to improve it at that point. And so that's when I started reaching out. And what you do is you write a book proposal, which is about 5 pages long, and that covers what will be covered in the book and the table of contents that you plan to have. But in itself, you don't have to have that book itself written yet. So it's
Mm.
really the book proposal that counts for a publisher. Um, I ended up just looking online to see which publisher might find this interesting. I looked at other books in this space to see what publishers they had worked with. And so I ended up sending out my book proposal to maybe ultimately it was 3 or 4 publishers before I had luck with one of those who was interested. And that was Business Expert Press, who was interested in moving this forward.
Wow, that's so neat. Are there w- what types of things should people be thinking about negotiating in these conversations?
Yeah, it honestly felt a little similar to fundraising, where you're going out there and you're
I'm trying not to say
putting.
it, but I was curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then in the contract, right? I mean, it's the obvious. There is going to be royalties. There are going to be the language around what you own versus what the publisher owns. So yeah, there is a contract, just like you would have in many other situations, that you then have to just look through in detail and make sure you're fine with it. If you're allowed to make an audiobook, if the rights are local or international, so all these things might matter.
Were there any twists that you would keep in mind for someone who is a complete novice that is just starting to write their book that you would tell them to look out for?
Yeah, as I just mentioned, this book proposal idea, you don't have to have that full book written before you go out
Yeah.
there and look for publishers. That would be my tip number one. I still think I probably would have written most of the book initially, because for me it was even like, can I do this? Can I finish this book? And then if you do decide to write a book, just realizing that all the little things will add up over time. As I said, like it took me maybe 3 months to write most of the book, but then 2 years to really finish it. And as I have a full-time job, it's really about the nights and weekends, like making these little tweaks to it. Like even writing a sentence is better than having written 0 sentence on a day. It's just those little things will add up over time. I mean, that's logical, but I've now felt it in its full effect with having been able to publish the book that way.
I can't even begin to imagine the mind games and just the sheer sort of fortitude it must take to write a book. I mean, were you ever feeling writer's block, or was your outline so good that you always kind of knew what was coming next when you sat down to write?
Yeah, no, it truly, there were days where like, oh, I really don't know how I'm going to explain this. And then it is important. Just some days you feel like more, oh, I'm going to write something down. At least there's some content there. And other days you'll feel more interested in going back and refining some content. And I think that gives you some variation and choice. And what do I feel like most today? And then as long as you've done something, it will help. And what also truly helped was getting some of my mentors to read this and give me feedback. I mean, the first person who read it was my mom, because she's an English major. So she was the first one to go through it fully. But then afterwards, Greg Bacon was read through it, who's one of our mentors from Forward Innovation. And a number of other people have given me feedback, including some really early stage entrepreneurs as well, who had just gone through biodesign and were starting on their journey. And so all of these different inputs were extremely helpful in them to decide, where do I need to refine? And really big portions of the book got shifted around after I received all of that feedback.
Well, that's so interesting. It sounds like that feedback was super valuable.
It definitely was.
I'm curious how you have thought about audience building as you write this book. Is that something that you were thinking about at the very beginning? How has that factored in?
Yeah, that's another one where I feel like I should have thought about these things way in advance, maybe. But to my defense, I didn't write this book to like become rich on it either. Or my goal really is to make sure that people can benefit from the learnings that another entrepreneur has had. But with that, I do want to make sure that people read it and find it. So it's been another fun experience. Of consumer marketing is complex as well, and has a lot of things that you can do or shouldn't do. But for me at the moment, it's about just making sure that there is awareness around it, where I can give some presentations that highlight what is in the book to the right audiences. Couple of podcasts. I've started my own podcast based on a recommendation from one of my mentors. And so that's been a fun thing as well. So every month to be able to put something new out there. This, David, it's very nice as well. I can be a part of your podcast journey. And I'm just continuing to look for opportunities to get this in front of what I think will be the right audience for this book.
Yeah. And what would the, if you're kind of imagining that ideal audience avatar, who is this book really speaking to when you're crafting it and thinking of that person?
I'd say the early stage entrepreneur or aspiring early stage entrepreneur, typically a first time founder, more than someone who's done it 5 times. But even the one who has gone through it a couple of times might actually find this helpful as well, because you might still get nuggets or just validation of what you've done. How are others going through similar experiences? The book is also focused, I call it innovation-driven startups. And what I mean by that is telling the opposite first. They're companies that will be able to get revenue without taking any money in. And maybe they will end up getting venture capital funding just to be able to scale. That's not the target here. I don't know I haven't had anyone read it from that audience yet, but I don't expect they'll get as much value out of it as the type of company that often in healthcare is the case, where you do need a bunch of funding before you can make any revenue, because you have to overcome high regulatory hurdles, because you typically have to do quite a bit of R&D before research and development before you can actually make your product that can get in the hands of your end users. So that's more of the target that I have. Like healthcare will be a typical area where these types of startups exist, but I wouldn't exclude other industries where there just are regulatory hurdles or the need for a lot of R&D, and so the requirements to have funding in a bank before you can start driving revenue.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh, Véronique, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing all these stories with me. Where should I direct people to find you online or learn more about you or your book?
Yeah, maybe before I go there, I'll show you. So you see the live copy here.
That is a super
But
cool cover, by the way.
yeah, it was really nice to get this in hand for the first time and see kind of what the publisher had done with it. So it was really nice. But yeah, in terms of where people can find me, I do have a website, veroniquepeiffer.com, where people can find out all the things around this book. The easiest way to buy it would be on Amazon. So you just type in The Scrappy Entrepreneur, you'll be able to find it there, and feel free to leave a good review as well on there. And yeah, and you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I've been somewhat more active there to be able to make sure that people find out about the book.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And we'll have all these links that you mentioned, we'll have them linked up in the show notes below. So for anyone watching this or hearing this, there's a link nearby if you take a look at your device. So, well, Véronique, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks so much, David. Super cool that you're doing this.